In the polished world of fine dining, appearances can be deceiving. When 17-year-old Marcus Washington takes a seat at Verdant, one of the city's most exclusive restaurants, he's just a brilliant student working on a scholarship application that could change his future. What he doesn't expect is to become the target of restaurant manager Diana Forrester, whose smile hides something darker beneath. "This isn't a library," she tells him coldly. "Verdant caters to a specific clientele." But Diana has made a catastrophic error in judgment. The quiet teenager she's humiliating and forcing to leave isn't just any high school student. And the text message Marcus sends as he walks out the door is about to trigger a chain of events that will shatter Diana's carefully constructed world. Because while Marcus has been taught to handle discrimination with dignity, his father Raymond Washington believes in a different kind of lesson, one that comes with consequences that Diana never saw coming. Sometimes karma doesn't just arrive, it owns the building. The autumn sun cast long shadows across the polished wooden floors of Verdant, one of the most upscale restaurants in the downtown district. The lunch rush had ended, leaving the restaurant in that peaceful lull between meals when only a few patrons lingered over coffee and dessert. In the corner booth by the large bay window sat Marcus Washington, a tall, lanky 17-year-old with a focused expression that made him appear older than his years. Marcus had chosen this spot carefully. The natural light was perfect for reading, and the ambient noise provided just enough background to help him concentrate without being distracting. 3 textbooks were spread before him, alongside a notebook filled with his neat handwriting and a laptop displaying a half-completed scholarship application. A small coffee sat at the edge of the table, still half full but long gone cold. "This essay has to be perfect," Marcus muttered to himself, fingers hovering over the keyboard. The Baxley Foundation scholarship represented everything he had worked toward, a full ride to any university of his choice. With his 4.2 GPA and extracurriculars, he had a shot. But the competition would be fierce. The scholarship prompt asked applicants to describe a place where they felt most inspired. For Marcus, it had always been restaurants. Not just any restaurants, but establishments like Verdant, where the atmosphere carried a certain gravitas. His father had taught him to appreciate such spaces, to feel comfortable in rooms where decisions were made, where power changed hands over handshakes and espresso. 2 more paragraphs, he told himself, taking a sip of the cold coffee and grimacing. He had been nursing that single cup for nearly 2 hours, stretching his limited budget as far as possible. At the front of the restaurant, Diana Forrester emerged from her office, clipboard in hand. At 42, Diana ran Verdant with military precision, her auburn hair pulled back in a tight bun that emphasized her sharp features. She had worked her way up from hostess to manager over 15 years and considered the restaurant her domain, her kingdom. Diana surveyed her realm with critical eyes, noting a water glass that needed refilling at table 7 and a slightly crooked painting near the entrance. Her gaze finally settled on the corner booth, where Marcus sat surrounded by his study materials. Her eyes narrowed. She did not recall seeing him order anything substantial. The receipts she had just reviewed didn't show any significant purchases from that table. Just a single coffee. For 2 hours of prime real estate. Diana straightened her already impeccable blazer and strode across the restaurant floor, her heels clicking purposefully against the hardwood. "Excuse me," she said, her voice crisp as she reached Marcus's table. "Is everything all right with your order?" Marcus looked up, momentarily disoriented as he shifted focus from his scholarship essay. "Oh yes, thank you. The coffee was great." He offered a polite smile, the one his parents had taught him to always use with authority figures, regardless of circumstances. Diana's gaze swept over the books, the laptop, the single coffee cup. "I see you've been here quite a while. Were you planning on ordering something else? Perhaps lunch?" The implication was clear, and Marcus felt heat rise to his face. He glanced at his watch. He hadn't realized how much time had passed. "I'm sorry, I got caught up in my work. I can order something else if—" "This isn't a library or a study hall," Diana interrupted, her voice remaining professional but taking on an edge that carried to nearby tables. "We have paying customers who need seating." Marcus looked around at the half-empty restaurant, confusion evident on his face. At least 8 tables stood vacant. "I understand, but I did purchase a single coffee hours ago." Diana's smile remained fixed, but her eyes had cooled considerably. "Verdant has a certain standard to maintain. Our customers expect a particular atmosphere." A couple at a nearby table glanced over, then quickly looked away, uncomfortable with the unfolding scene. An older gentleman reading a newspaper lowered it slightly to observe. Marcus began gathering his books, movements deliberate and controlled despite the embarrassment flooding through him. His father had warned him about moments like these. "There will be times," Raymond had told him, "when people will try to make you feel like you don't belong. Those are the exact moments when you must remember that you do." "I apologize for the misunderstanding," Marcus said, his voice steady but quieter than before. "I'll clear out of the space." Diana watched as he packed his belongings, a flicker of something, perhaps doubt, crossing her features. But it vanished quickly, replaced by the certainty that she was merely enforcing restaurant policy. This wasn't personal. It was business. "Perhaps the coffee shop down the street would be more appropriate for studying," she suggested, her tone softening slightly, as if offering helpful advice rather than showing him the door. Marcus had nearly finished packing when he accidentally knocked his cold coffee, spilling a few drops onto the polished table. It was a minor spill, nothing that wouldn't wipe away with a napkin. Diana's reaction, however, was immediate and disproportionate. "This is exactly what I mean," she said, voice rising. "This is not an appropriate environment for schoolwork. You're making a mess in my restaurant." The word "my" hung in the air between them. In Diana's mind, Verdant was hers. She had dedicated her career to this establishment, had sacrificed weekends and holidays, had missed her own sister's wedding because the previous manager had quit without notice. She had earned her position through sheer determination, and part of that position meant protecting Verdant's upscale image. Marcus froze, napkin in hand, halfway through cleaning the small spill. Something in Diana's tone had shifted from professional concern to personal affront. He recognized it immediately, the moment when someone decided he was a problem rather than a person. "I'm sorry about the spill," he said, wiping the table clean with deliberate care. "It won't happen again." "No," Diana agreed, "it won't. Because I'm going to have to ask you to leave. Now." The few remaining patrons were now openly watching the exchange. The older gentleman with the newspaper frowned. A woman in business attire at a window table set down her fork. "Is there a problem here?" the businessman asked, half rising from his seat. Diana turned, customer service smile firmly in place. "No problem at all. Just a matter of restaurant policy." Marcus finished packing his bag, movements now automatic as his mind raced. He was hyper-aware of every eye on him, of the assumptions being made, of the narrative unfolding. He'd seen this script before, had been warned about it, prepared for it, but experiencing it still stung. "May I at least finish packing my things?" he asked, his voice level despite the emotion building inside him. Diana hesitated, suddenly conscious of her audience. "Of course," she said, moderating her tone. "But please be quick about it." As Marcus zipped his backpack, Diana added in a lower voice, meant only for him. "Next time, consider whether an establishment is the right fit before settling in. Verdant caters to a specific clientele." The implication hung in the air, undeniable, yet just vague enough to maintain plausible deniability. Marcus felt a familiar weight settle in his stomach, the leaden understanding that no matter his grades, his manners, or his potential, some people would always see his skin first and his humanity second. He stood, backpack slung over one shoulder, and straightened to his full height, a gesture his father had taught him. "Stand tall," Raymond had always said. "Don't let them see you bend." "Thank you for the coffee," Marcus said, voice clear and carrying just enough for nearby tables to hear. "I appreciate your hospitality." The tiny emphasis on the final word wasn't lost on Diana, whose lips thinned slightly. As Marcus walked toward the exit with measured steps, he pulled out his phone and sent a quick text. His fingers moved swiftly across the screen, composing a message to the one person who had always prepared him for moments like these while simultaneously fighting to create a world where such preparation wouldn't be necessary. "Marcus, Dad, something happened at Verdant downtown. Can you call me when you're free?" Outside, the autumn air felt cool against his flushed face. Marcus took a deep breath, centering himself as his father had taught him. This wasn't the first time something like this had happened, and despite all the progress in the world, it likely wouldn't be the last. The anger and humiliation threatened to overwhelm him, but he pushed it down, channeling it instead into determination. He would finish that scholarship essay. He would get into a top university. And someday, he would walk into places like Verdant not as someone who didn't belong, but as someone who couldn't be denied. His phone buzzed in his hand. It was his father. Raymond, I'm in a meeting but can step out. Are you okay? Marcus looked back at the restaurant's elegant facade, at the gold-lettered Verdant gleaming in the afternoon sun. Through the large windows, he could see Diana returning to her station, already moving on with her day, the incident likely nothing more than a minor blip in her routine. Marcus, I'm fine. But I think we need to talk about the restaurant in your new building. He pressed send and walked away from Verdant, his posture straight, his pace unhurried. Behind him, unbeknownst to Diana Forrester, the wheels of consequence had already begun to turn. Raymond Washington sat at the head of the conference table, his attention focused on the financial projections displayed on the screen before him. At 45, Raymond carried himself with the quiet confidence of a man who had built his success from nothing. His tailored suit was expensive but understated, his only flashy accessory a vintage watch that had been his grandfather's, a reminder of where he came from and the sacrifices made for him to be sitting in this room. These numbers for the West Side development are promising, he said to the team of executives gathered around the table. But I want to see more community integration in the plan. We're not just building properties, we're building neighborhoods. His phone vibrated against the table. Raymond normally ignored calls during meetings, but when he saw his son's name on the screen, he felt a familiar protective instinct surge through him. Marcus rarely contacted him during school hours unless something was wrong. "Excuse me, everyone. I need to take this," Raymond said, rising from his chair. "Take 5 minutes, and we'll continue when I return." The executives nodded respectfully as Raymond stepped into the hallway, already dialing his son back. When Marcus didn't answer, Raymond checked his messages and found the text. His expression darkened as he read it once, then twice. "Verdant," he murmured to himself, immediately connecting the dots. The upscale restaurant was indeed located in one of his buildings, a recent acquisition that he had made through one of his holding companies. As was his practice, Raymond had maintained the previous management structure after the purchase, preferring to observe how businesses operated before making any changes. Raymond dialed his son again. This time, Marcus picked up on the first ring. "Dad." Marcus's voice was steady, but Raymond knew his son well enough to detect the underlying tension. "What happened?" Raymond asked, his tone measured but urgent. Marcus recounted the incident in detail. The studying, the single coffee, Diana's initial approach, and the escalating confrontation that led to his removal from the restaurant. With each word, Raymond's jaw tightened, but he remained silent, allowing his son to finish. "I handled it the way you taught me," Marcus concluded. "But Dad, it wasn't right." "No," Raymond agreed, his voice low and controlled. "It wasn't." He paused, processing both the incident and the implications. "Are you okay?" "Yeah, I'm fine," Marcus replied, but Raymond heard the slight waver in his voice. This was the part that always cut deepest. Watching his bright, talented son have to develop calluses on his spirit just to navigate a world that sometimes seemed determined to limit him. "Where are you now?" Raymond asked. "At the library, a few blocks from Verdant. I still need to finish this scholarship application." Raymond checked his watch. "Stay there. I'll come get you in an hour. We'll talk more then." After ending the call, Raymond returned to the conference room where his team waited. With a professionalism born from years of practice, he compartmentalized his anger and refocused on the meeting. "Let's wrap this up quickly," he announced. "I have an urgent matter to attend to concerning one of our properties." 50 minutes later, Raymond was in his car, navigating downtown traffic with uncharacteristic impatience. His assistant had already rescheduled his afternoon appointments and pulled the file on the building housing Verdant. Raymond reviewed what he knew about the restaurant as he drove. Verdant had been a tenant for nearly 8 years, predating his ownership of the building. Their lease was actually up for renewal soon, next week in fact. His property management company had already prepared the paperwork, offering Diana Forrester a renewal at a rate well below market value, a decision Raymond had approved based on the restaurant's longevity and apparent stability. That paperwork was now in a folder on the passenger seat beside him. Raymond had instructed his assistant to bring it directly to his car, along with the complete tenant file. When he arrived at the library, Marcus was waiting outside, backpack slung over one shoulder. Raymond felt a swell of pride at the sight of his son, tall, composed, and resilient despite everything. But he also felt a familiar ache, the pain of knowing that Marcus had to be stronger than his peers just to be treated equally. "Get in," Raymond said, unlocking the doors of his Mercedes. Marcus slid into the passenger seat, moving the folder to make room. What's this? Verdant's lease renewal, Raymond replied simply. Marcus glanced at his father, understanding dawning on his face. So it is your building. I thought it might be, but I wasn't sure. Raymond nodded, pulling away from the curb. I acquired it 6 months ago through Wellington Holdings. The tenants don't know there's been a change in ownership yet. That's how I prefer it. Gives me time to observe how they operate without them putting on a show. They drove in silence for a few blocks, Raymond processing his thoughts while Marcus looked out the window. Tell me exactly what she said, Raymond finally requested, his voice calm but firm. Marcus hesitated only briefly before repeating Diana's words verbatim, including her final comment about Verdant catering to a specific clientele. Raymond's knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. I see. Dad, you don't have to do anything, Marcus said, recognizing the controlled anger in his father's voice. I can handle people like her. I know you can, Raymond replied, genuine pride in his tone. You've always been able to handle yourself with more grace than I had at your age. But that doesn't mean you should have to. He pulled into a parking space half a block from Verdant. Before exiting the car, he turned to his son. There's a difference between surviving injustice and accepting it, Raymond said, his eyes locked with Marcus's. I've taught you to survive it because that's a skill you need in this world. But I've never wanted you to accept it. Marcus nodded, understanding the distinction. What are you going to do? Raymond picked up the folder. I'm going to have a conversation about business ethics and customer service. He paused, then added, Wait here. I won't be long. The afternoon sun cast long shadows as Raymond walked the half-block to Verdant. Through the windows, he could see that the restaurant was now in full preparation for the dinner service. Staff moved efficiently between tables, setting out fresh linens and polished silverware. Raymond straightened his tie, adopted the measured pace of a man accustomed to commanding rooms, and pushed through the front door. The hostess, a young woman barely out of her teens, looked up with a practiced smile. Good afternoon, sir. Do you have a reservation? No, Raymond replied pleasantly. I'm here to see Diana Forrester. Is she available? May I tell her who's asking for her? The hostess inquired, clearly recognizing that Raymond was not a typical walk-in customer. Raymond Washington, he said simply. Regarding her lease renewal. The hostess's eyes widened slightly at the mention of the lease. One moment, please. As she disappeared into the back, Raymond took the opportunity to observe the restaurant. It was undeniably beautiful. High ceilings, tasteful art, immaculate place settings. A space designed to convey exclusivity and refinement. He could understand why Marcus had chosen it as a place to work on his scholarship application. His son had always been drawn to environments that matched his aspirations. Mr. Washington? Raymond turned to see Diana approaching, hand extended in greeting, a warm professional smile fixed on her face. She was exactly as Marcus had described her, mid-40s, auburn hair pulled back severely, sharp features accentuated by precise makeup. Ms. Forrester, Raymond shook her hand firmly. Thank you for making time to see me without an appointment. Of course, Diana replied, her tone deferential. Melissa mentioned something about the lease renewal? I've been eagerly awaiting those documents. Raymond held up the folder. I have them right here, actually. I thought we might discuss a few details before finalizing everything. Diana's smile brightened. Wonderful. Would you like to sit at a table, or would you prefer my office? Your office would be perfect, Raymond replied smoothly. What we have to discuss is somewhat private. Diana led him through the restaurant, past the kitchen where chefs were busy with dinner preparations, and into a small but well-appointed office at the back. Raymond noted the numerous awards and certificates displayed on the walls. Community business leadership, culinary excellence, Chamber of Commerce recognition. Please have a seat, Diana offered, gesturing to a chair opposite her desk. Can I offer you anything? Coffee? Water? Perhaps something stronger? Nothing for me, thank you, Raymond replied, settling into the chair and placing the folder on the desk between them. Diana sat down, her posture perfect, her expression eager. I must say, I was hoping for a slight reduction in the lease rate, given current market conditions and our long-standing tenancy. Raymond smiled, the expression not quite reaching his eyes. Actually, that's exactly what I'm here to discuss. We're considering a significant reduction in your rate. Quite generous, if I do say so myself. Diana's eyes lit up. That's wonderful news. The past few years have been challenging for the restaurant industry, as I'm sure you know. Indeed, Raymond agreed. which makes maintaining a positive customer experience all the more important, wouldn't you agree? Absolutely, Diana nodded emphatically. Customer service is my top priority at Verdant. I personally ensure that every patron feels welcomed and valued. Raymond tilted his head slightly. Every patron? Of course, Diana affirmed without hesitation. We pride ourselves on creating an atmosphere of sophisticated hospitality. Interesting, Raymond murmured, opening the folder and pretending to review the documents inside. Tell me, Ms. Forrester, how do you handle situations where customers might be using your space in ways you don't anticipate? Diana seemed pleased by the question, leaning forward slightly. That's actually something I addressed just today. We occasionally get people who try to use Verdant as a personal office or study space, ordering the minimum and taking up valuable seating for hours. I see, Raymond said, his voice neutral. And how do you handle such situations? Firmly but professionally, Diana replied with evident pride. Just this afternoon, I had to ask a teenager to leave. He'd been nursing a single coffee for hours, taking up one of our best window booths with his school books. That sounds challenging, Raymond prompted, his expression unreadable. It was necessary, Diana said with a dismissive wave. He clearly wasn't our target demographic. Verdant caters to a specific clientele, you understand. We can't have just anyone loitering and changing the atmosphere our regulars expect. And what demographic would that be? Raymond asked, his tone still casual, but his eyes now fixed intently on Diana's face. Diana hesitated, sensing something shift in the conversation. Well, professionals. Business people. Those who appreciate fine dining and are willing to pay for the experience. I see, Raymond said again, closing the folder slowly. And this teenager, how would you describe him? Diana blinked, confusion creeping into her expression. He was young. Maybe 16 or 17. Had textbooks everywhere. Spilled his coffee. What did he look like? Raymond pressed. Diana's brow furrowed. Tall. African American. Why do you ask? Raymond reached into his jacket pocket and withdrew his phone. He pulled up a photo and turned the screen toward Diana. Was this him? The color drained from Diana's face as she stared at the image of Marcus in his graduation suit from junior year, standing proudly next to Raymond. That's your son? She whispered, the implications crashing down around her. My son, Raymond confirmed, his voice now carrying an edge of steel beneath its calm surface. Marcus Washington, National Honor Society, captain of the debate team, currently working on applications for scholarships that could take him to any university in the country. Diana's mouth opened and closed, no sound emerging. The same young man, Raymond continued, who you decided wasn't your target demographic. The same young man who you humiliated in front of your other patrons and told didn't belong in your establishment. Mr. Washington, Diana finally managed, her voice thin. I had no idea he was your son. If I had known. That's precisely the problem, isn't it? Raymond cut her off, his voice still controlled but vibrating with intensity. The fact that it would have mattered. That you would have treated him differently if you had known who his father was. Diana's professional composure crumbled entirely. Please, Mr. Washington, there's been a misunderstanding. I would never. Never what? Raymond asked. Never discriminate against someone based on their appearance? Because that's exactly what you did today. He picked up the lease renewal documents and slowly, deliberately tore them in half. What are you doing? Diana gasped, staring at the torn papers. Exercising my rights as the building owner, Raymond replied evenly. Wellington Holdings purchased this building 6 months ago. I'm the principal owner of Wellington Holdings. Diana's face, already pale, now took on an ashen quality. Owner? But I've been dealing with Berkeley management for years. Berkeley management works for me now, Raymond stated. And I've been observing my properties, seeing how tenants operate when they don't know the owner is watching. He stood up, gathering the torn pieces of the lease. You've been very educational, Ms. Forrester. According to the terms of your current lease, which expires next week, I'm required to give you 30 days' notice if I choose not to renew. Consider this your official notice. You can't do this, Diana protested, rising to her feet. I've invested everything in this restaurant. The renovations, the new kitchen equipment. I took out loans based on the verbal agreement for renewal. Verbal agreements aren't binding, Raymond said coldly. As a businesswoman, you should know that. You have 30 days to vacate the premises. Please, Diana's voice cracked. Verdant is my life. I've worked here for 15 years. I can't start over somewhere else. For a moment, Raymond hesitated, seeing genuine desperation in Diana's eyes. But then he remembered the controlled hurt in his son's voice, the casual cruelty of her dismissal, and his resolve hardened. "You should have thought about that before you decided my son wasn't good enough for your restaurant," Raymond said, moving toward the door. "Perhaps this will be an opportunity for you to reconsider your definition of target demographic." He left Diana standing behind her desk, surrounded by her awards and accolades, facing the sudden collapse of everything she had worked for. As Raymond walked back through the restaurant, he noted again its beauty, its careful curation of exclusivity. In 30 days, it would belong to someone else. Someone who understood that true excellence wasn't about keeping people out, but about welcoming them in. Outside, Marcus was waiting by the car, the setting sun casting long shadows across his face. He looked up as his father approached, searching Raymond's expression for clues. "Well?" Marcus asked simply. Raymond placed a hand on his son's shoulder. "Let's just say Ms. Forrester has learned an expensive lesson about customer service today." As they drove away from Verdant, Raymond glanced in the rearview mirror at the restaurant's elegant facade, already planning who might take over the space when Diana Forrester was gone. It would be someone who understood that a business that discriminated wasn't just morally wrong. It was also a poor investment. Beside him, Marcus was quiet, processing the events of the day. Finally, he spoke. "Was that justice or revenge?" he asked softly. Raymond considered the question carefully before answering. "Maybe a bit of both," he admitted. "But mostly it was a consequence. In business and in life, choices have consequences. Diana Forrester made her choice today, and now she'll live with the result." Marcus nodded slowly, turning to look out the window at the city passing by. "I hope she learns something from this." "So do I, son," Raymond replied, thinking of the shock and fear in Diana's eyes when she realized who he was. "So do I." The morning sun filtered through the blinds of Diana Forrester's apartment, illuminating the scattered papers across her dining table. Financial documents, loan statements, and hastily written notes created a chaotic mosaic of her crumbling professional life. It had been 3 weeks since Raymond Washington had torn up her lease renewal, and despite desperate attempts to find alternative locations, Diana was facing the inevitable. Verdant was finished. Her phone rang, displaying her sister's number. Diana let it go to voicemail, just as she had done with the previous 5 calls. How could she explain that 15 years of work was evaporating because of one terrible judgment call? That her savings, her reputation, her future, all of it balanced on the edge of a cliff because she had decided a black teenager didn't belong in her restaurant? The irony wasn't lost on her. For years, she had prided herself on creating an exclusive atmosphere at Verdant. Now, she was the one being excluded, and the feeling was devastating. "Your final day of operation will be this Friday," her landlord's representative had informed her yesterday. "Mr. Washington has already found a new tenant for the space." Diana took a sip of cold coffee and stared out the window. 3 more days, and then what? At 42, starting over seemed impossible. The restaurant industry was tight-knit. Word traveled fast. Several colleagues had already heard rumors about why she was being forced out, their previously warm relationships cooling noticeably. Her phone buzzed with a text message. Unlike the calls she'd been ignoring, this one caught her attention immediately. It was from Raymond Washington. "Raymond, I'd like to meet this afternoon at 3 p.m. Verdant, to discuss transition matters." Diana's heart raced. Was this a reprieve? A chance to plead her case one final time? Or simply another humiliation to endure? Either way, she couldn't refuse. "Diana, I'll be there." At precisely 3 p.m., Diana unlocked Verdant's front door. The restaurant was closed on Mondays, normally her day for paperwork, staff scheduling, and menu planning. Today, those routines felt painfully obsolete. She was surprised to find not just Raymond waiting but Marcus as well. The teenager stood slightly behind his father, his expression unreadable as Diana approached. She felt shame wash over her, remembering their last interaction and how differently she would handle it now. "Ms. Forrester," Raymond acknowledged her with a nod, his tone businesslike but not hostile. "Mr. Washington," Diana replied, struggling to maintain eye contact. "And Marcus. Thank you for coming." The words felt inadequate, but she pressed on. "I owe you an apology, Marcus. My behavior was inexcusable." Marcus studied her for a moment before responding. "Why did you do it?" The directness of the question caught Diana off guard. She had prepared for anger, even contempt, but not this calm inquiry that demanded honest reflection. She began, then stopped, forcing herself to consider the question seriously. I've been asking myself that same question for 3 weeks. The easy answer would be that I was protecting my business, enforcing policy. But that's not true, is it? Both Raymond and Marcus remained silent, waiting. The truth is uglier, Diana continued, her voice quieter. I made assumptions based on how you looked. I decided you didn't fit my image of Verdant's clientele. I never stopped to consider who you actually were. She met Marcus's gaze directly. I'm truly sorry. Marcus nodded, accepting her words without offering immediate forgiveness. It was more than Diana deserved, and she knew it. Raymond gestured toward a table. Shall we sit? There are matters to discuss. The three settled around one of Verdant's elegant tables, the same one where Marcus had been studying 3 weeks earlier. The symmetry wasn't lost on any of them. Miss Forrester, Raymond began, I've had time to consider the situation further. My decision regarding your lease stands. However, I've been impressed by your sister's restaurant management background. Diana blinked in surprise. You've spoken to Vanessa? I have, Raymond confirmed. She's experienced, qualified, and comes highly recommended. I've offered her the opportunity to manage the new establishment that will replace Verdant. She's accepted. Diana felt a complex mixture of emotions. Relief for her sister, envy at the opportunity, shame that it had come at her expense. That's wonderful news, she managed. Vanessa is excellent at what she does. She also spoke very highly of your culinary skills, Raymond continued. Apparently, before you moved into management, you were quite the chef. Diana nodded slowly, remembering her early days in the kitchen, the passion that had driven her into the restaurant business in the first place. That was a long time ago. Not so long that those skills have disappeared, Raymond observed. The new establishment will need an experienced head chef. Someone who understands fine dining, but is willing to create a more inclusive atmosphere. Diana froze, hardly daring to understand what Raymond was suggesting. Are you offering me a position? I'm offering you a second chance, Raymond clarified. Not as manager. That trust will need to be rebuilt over time. But as head chef, yes. Working under your sister's management, with clear expectations about how all customers are to be treated. Diana looked from Raymond to Marcus, searching for the catch, the hidden punishment. Why would you do this? After what I did. It was Marcus who answered. Because firing you doesn't solve the real problem. It just moves it somewhere else. Raymond nodded at his son's words. Exactly. Real change doesn't come from punishment alone, but from creating opportunities to do better. He leaned forward. Make no mistake, Miss Forrester, this is not forgiveness. This is accountability with a chance for redemption. Whether you take it is entirely up to you. Diana felt tears threatening, but held them back. I would be honored to accept the position, she said quietly. And I promise you both, I will earn this second chance. See that you do, Raymond replied, his expression serious. The new restaurant opens in 6 weeks. It will cater to everyone, students, families, business people, anyone who appreciates good food and respectful service. 3 months later, Community Table celebrated its successful first quarter in the space formerly occupied by Verdant. The restaurant had quickly developed a reputation for exceptional cuisine and a welcoming atmosphere. At Marcus's suggestion, they had created a special study corner, where students could work while enjoying affordable menu options. Diana worked in the kitchen, rediscovering her love for creating food rather than managing people. The demotion had been humbling but ultimately freeing. For the first time in years, she remembered why she'd entered the restaurant business. Not to exclude, but to create experiences that brought people together. On a busy Saturday evening, Diana emerged briefly from the kitchen to check on a special order. She spotted Marcus at a corner table, surrounded by friends, celebrating his acceptance to Princeton with a full scholarship from the Baxley Foundation. Their eyes met briefly across the restaurant. Diana offered a small nod of acknowledgement, which Marcus returned before turning back to his celebration. It wasn't friendship. It might never be. But it was progress, evidence that sometimes the most powerful form of karma isn't destruction but transformation. Raymond, watching from across the room as he discussed business with colleagues, caught the brief exchange between his son and Diana. He smiled slightly, satisfied that his decision had created something more valuable than revenge, a lesson that would last a lifetime. In the kitchen, Diana returned to her station, directing her staff with a newfound humility and purpose. The restaurant that had once been her kingdom was now her classroom, teaching her daily that true excellence was never about keeping people out, but about welcoming them in.